Nigeria's total trade stood at 26,801.95 billion naira, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Exports were valued at 12,693.62 billion naira, while exports amounted to 14,108.33 billion naira. On an annual basis, total trade was 71,880.01 billion naira, of which imports amounted to 35,917.62 billion naira, and exports were recorded at 35,962.39 billion naira. The effort needs to increase Nigeria's trade volume and address crucial market access barriers, as well as boost our exchanges in key sectors, is the focus of our conversation today. And joining me to discuss this is Trade Ambassador Collins Eziru-Akumoso of International Trade Facilitation Association. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me, Neka.
Great. Now, Nigeria is party to several regional and continental trade agreements, such as the African Continental Free Trade Area. However, many people argue that implementation has been slow. What concrete measures do you think the government should take to fully leverage this agreement to grow Nigeria's trade with its neighbors?
Thank you for asking. I think it's a critical question to ask at this time, especially with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement in play. But you have to look at it in two ways. One, the government is at the forefront of the negotiations. It's at the forefront of ensuring that we dot the I's and cross the T's. But to progress this, it has to be also driven by private sector. And for private sector to drive this means that they need the information and the backing, right? So that gap between what the government is doing in terms of negotiations and what the private sector knows, or the information, access to information that they have, at this stage is critical. We're at a point where we need more information, more awareness than anything else. So the government, as they're striking deals, making negotiations, need to invest a whole lot in letting the private sector, the general public, know. As you're aware, most of our exports are done by small businesses, right? We have major exports done by big companies, of course, especially our oil that is more or less streamlined. But a lot of the players in the regional trades are small businesses, but they do not have the information on what to do, how to do it, what benefits they have, how they can access it. And that's something that cannot be driven by them, but by public sector. So at this stage, I would say the major thing is that we must rally the government infrastructure to passing information, strategic advocacy for those in the private sector to understand what's going on, to know what steps they are to take, to know which agencies to liaise with, and at the same time, begin to position their businesses to take advantage of whatever opportunities are there in terms of export trade with our neighbors.
Nice. Now, how can Nigeria reduce its dependence on oil exports and diversify its export base into other sectors like manufacturing or agriculture?
My dear, this is not a new discussion. This discussion has been on since I was a child. I think the important thing is not about how, it's about the willingness to take the steps that we need to take. For instance, how easy is it for you to set up a factory and manufacture? A lot of our manufacturing is dependent on imports for us to succeed. Let's talk about power. Power also is a major challenge for those who are in the manufacturing business. So if I don't have access to adequate power, regardless of what band I'm in, and if it's expensive for me to produce, regardless of what band I'm in, then it makes manufacturing not so interesting. So the thing is not what do we need to do in terms of, do we know the steps to take, that we need to provide power, we need to provide infrastructure, export infrastructure in terms of more ports, we need to have the roads working, we need to have cold storage. Those are not things that we are oblivious of. The question is, do we have the will to begin to put these things in place? Do we have the will to make the rails work for us so that we can move goods from Maiduguri all the way to Lagos? Do we have the will to, drive having more ports in Calabar, make Calabar functional, make Aba functional, make all the coastal regions have the ability to export or even make the existing ports efficient. I think that's the conversation we should be having. The existing infrastructure, how do we make it efficient? The ones we need to put in place, how do we begin to drive that home? Because, as I said, this conversation has been on since I was a child. The question now is, what do we need to do to implement? Do we have the political will? Are those in authority willing to begin to drive these initiatives home? Right? Those are the things that need to be done. For instance, if you've done export between January and now, you know the fluctuations in foreign currency, and we're trying to get FX down. So if you did an export at the time that it was 1,800, by the time your proceeds are coming, with all the expenses you've had, the value of what you're getting is lower. So you'll be getting that, what, 1,200 or thereabouts, depending on what the rate is, as at the time you receive your export proceeds. That gap that has been created in your margins, who's going to cater for it? So there has to be a mechanism, to support the exporter so that they're confident to go back. So those fluctuations do not only affect import, they affect export. And we must encourage the exporters to continue to manufacture. So as I said, it's a question of the will to look into the little gaps that there are and then begin to forcefully reposition ourselves to bridge those gaps, because we do know what they are. And there's really, I don't think it helps the average Nigerian to begin to say, oh, we need roads. We know we need roads. Oh, the rails should work. Oh, we know we need the rails to work. Oh, we need to be very efficient at the ports. Oh, we know that we need to have that level of efficiency. Oh, we should stabilize the exchange rate that is used at the ports. We know that we need these things. Let's just get them done.
All right. Now, let's talk about the challenges and opportunities for promoting non-oil exports in Nigeria. Can you throw more light on this?
In terms of opportunity, I think this is a great time. This is actually a great time, because for anybody who wants to buy items from Nigeria, it is the level of where our naira is makes it cheap for them to access goods in the country. So this is actually a great time. I think this is where we should hit the road and start saying, oh, we have this, we have that, can you come and buy? The question now is, when a market says they want something, have we positioned ourselves to provide those items for them? So we're talking cocoa, we're talking gold. Do we have a structure through which someone can actually get into the market and get these items? I recall that there's a program, the One State, One Product agenda, that had been done with state governments, between state governments and the Ministry of Trade through the Export Promotion Council. Where are we on implementing that project? So if I'm coming into Nigeria as an investor, or I want to purchase something from the country, I know that I can go to a particular state and get certain items. I know I can go to a particular state where they have comparative advantage and get whatever it is I need. Where are we in terms of that? So the challenge is, again, we don't have the right information, or we have not streamlined information for the general public or for those potential investors to know where to go to get what they need to get. We have to start putting those structures in place. I think it also brings an opportunity for the private sector. So, because it has to be an interplay between public and private sector. There's only so much that the government can do, as much as they have a strategic role to play. But the private sector also needs to lend its voice to this and say, hey, look, we're here. We have sesame, we have gold, we have lithium, we have whatever else we have. And this is what you can actually access it. And maybe perhaps one more thing would be that in doing so, there has to be that encouragement of people to create value as against volume. I'll explain it a little bit. Okay. Instead of driving how much of what we send outside of the country, how much value do we create out of what we have? So are we sending gold out, or are we sending jewelry out? Are we sending our precious stones out, or are we sending jewelry out? That's what we need to think about. So the refinery Dangote's refinery is welcome, because now we will not be sending out so much, hopefully. We'll not be sending out only crude, we'll be sending out refined products. Can we do that in other sectors? Can we send out tomato paste instead of just tomatoes? Can we send out, mango butter, for instance, instead of sending out mangoes? I think those are the opportunities that exist, again, but it requires consciousness of the government to say, hey, look, we want to encourage the businesses to set up and operate, and at the same time, business owners need to say, okay, look, these opportunities are there. We want to take it and run. So they are not stifled when they start running the business, right? Those are some of the things that need to be done. For instance, today I would say, if I were to open a company and put a signboard and say I am Collins and Daughters Nigeria Limited, the amount of agencies that would come asking for different things, it's not streamlined. That makes it difficult for any business owner to want to do things legitimately. I think we should begin to streamline that on the public sector side. And on the private sector side, provide the opportunities for private investors or private business people to run. Yeah.
Nice. So what measures can be taken to improve the quality and competitiveness of Nigerian exports in the global market?
I think if you want to improve quality and competitiveness, there are two things. Already there's an initiative which the federal government is already doing in terms of quality improvement, and it's been implemented by the British Standards Institute as well as our other quality institutions in the country. I think that's already a practical step. But the one major thing to do is to ask the markets that we want to send things to, because the buyer that usually would determine, I want this done like this, I want it packaged in a particular manner, I want it to have this level of quality. So where are those markets that we have found that we have relationship with? Maybe Spain, maybe the Netherlands, all those places that we have found that we're exporting items to. We need to begin to use the apparatus we have as government, such as the National Orientation Agency, to tell manufacturers, look, if you're going to export to these markets, this is the standard they're looking for. So from the onset, from primary production, they know what is expected of them in the market and they begin to prepare for it. So if we don't have that level of advocacy, then the quality will not be met. So you'll be producing something of quality, but quality to whom? So export is one place where we begin with the answers in mind. You look at what the market is looking for and begin to work your quality levels to that. So that's a major place where we can have a quick win. And with that, what happens is that everybody turns to Nigeria to say, okay, we already know that they're going to produce whatever goods or services to our standards. We can go there to get it from them. So we need that level of advocacy so that the private sector knows what the markets are looking for, because the market access activity is being done by the government, and then the private sector can take that information on board and begin to position themselves to meet the standards that is required by the market. That's one practical way. And if we do that, I can assure you in the next 12 months, we'll see significant change in export volumes.
On a final note, what innovations on technology can we put in place to simplify trade processes and promote cross-border trade?
I think what His Excellency, what our President has done in terms of the marching order on single window is important. That singular action, if taken to bear, where documentation is done through technology and it is done, there's a single window for export and import trade, that alone will streamline export activities, or to streamline the level of documentation. NAFDAC would not be asking you for the same thing that customs is going to be asking for, because they can go to one portal and access that information. So everybody knows what to put on the system. If that is done, if that is driven and achieved, I can assure you, like other countries, Hong Kong, Singapore, we are significantly going to, we're not talking about just doubling export. We're going to see exports increase. And we're going to see the value of export, not just volume of exports, increase if we're to get our single window right. I think that's one practical thing that we can drive home at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins, for joining us on the program today. We look forward to having you again in future episodes.
Thank you for having me.